Okay, the camera is on.
Camera rolling. So, welcome Joshua Tartakovsky, our friend already, because he's hanging with us for a week and we know a lot about him, and it's very exciting to meet somebody who traveled around the world, who was raised in Philadelphia and then moved to Israel, and now you're an independent journalist who's traveling around the world and giving your independent opinion. Okay, so welcome to Belgrade and Karavansaray. So, I guess we will talk a little bit about the situation on Near East and Israel regarding to what's happening around the world. I do believe we share this common ground on ideas what's happening in the world right now with all these elite trying to tie up and move people back and forth where the social systems are collapsing, and now we are facing rise of the real money elite who are leaning toward right, and they're like activists from California, New York, Caribbeans, Europe, Asia, activists who are saying the history is repeating itself, because we have a very cruel kind of elite who are trying to put us against each other, cut the social benefits, and push people further in the dark. So what, tell us.
Okay, so thank you very much for letting me speak here. I think it's an interesting opportunity. And most importantly, I would welcome any questions you have, because it's all about all of us learning something new. So whenever you have a question, feel free to ask. So basically, the point of my short lecture is to focus on two different parts. The first half of the lecture is the history of how Israel became what it is today. Because Israel started off in a very different path in the beginning. And it's very interesting to see the trajectory it took and how different parties changed their course. The second part of the lecture is, or maybe, yes, is more about the last main two social protests and what is happening right now. Because now Israel is probably entering one of the biggest economic crises it ever had. But at the same time, it's under an extreme policing environment due to coronavirus. But I'll get to that later. So we'll start with history first. But actually, well, maybe I'll ask you, what do you prefer to start with, the present or the past? What do you prefer?
We actually prefer past first,
okay.
so we can have the idea what caused certain moments in the history, like all Israel, modern Israel, and then development to the present state, and then you can give us more deeper analysis of the present state.
Okay, great. So let's begin. See. How would I connect it to the...
Oh yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so first of all, we need to understand what happened in historical Palestine over the past century. We need to look, in my opinion, at the youth movements, at the Zionist labor youth movements that began in Eastern Europe. Why? Because they were the ones who moved into Palestine in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and they're the ones who actually went and settled different parts of the land and developed either what's called moshavim in Hebrew, which is a kind of a agricultural space where people would share the profits, but they would still have independent living, or kibbutzim, which were like our communes, where people would share everything, and where the children would, including even personal clothes, and where the children would be put in a children's home. They wouldn't sleep with their parents. So the first one I'm going to talk about now is called Hashomer HaTzayir, which means the Young Guard. It was founded in Galicia, Poland in 1913. it was a Zionist organization that encouraged migration to Palestine and the creation of kibbutzim, which were very tight communes. Where now the idea of this movement was basically to entirely transform the Jewish identity and the Jewish people, because the whole idea was to turn Jews who used to work a lot into, who were seen as insecure, weak, or working in financial areas, or working in banking, not working with the land, not working in agriculture, not working in physical things, to turn them into a new kind of people, where they would work in physical things, work in agriculture, and become a new kind of nation. And like what Ben Gurion said, who was Israel's first prime minister and one of the main leaders, was that the way he put it, he wanted to move beyond the notion of the labor rights and workers' rights, emancipate the worker and emancipate the nation. So he kind of mixed, because at that time, the proletariat consciousness and workers' right was very common. Almost everyone believed in it. Nowadays, people don't use those terms as much, even though maybe we're going back to that now, but there's a repeat. But then people had a very strong class consciousness. So people were not necessarily communists, but they had a very strong socialist consciousness or socialist identity. And then, so the way this organization would work, their whole idea was to transform the experience of the members, not only through education, but also through taking them on trips like scouts, where they would camp out in nature, and also actually engage in physical work in a mountain in the middle of nowhere. They would actually build a farm, build a village, and live together and share everything together, and they would sing together, and they would have different ceremonies, so they developed a very strong identity. Then there's another movement, which basically became the backbone of Israel's main trade union. Now, Israel's main trade union, which was founded like around 1920, was a very powerful body because it included all the Jewish workers in Palestine. But at the same time, they didn't want to include Palestinian workers in it. So only Jewish workers were allowed to participate. And basically, so this youth movement was like it was closely tied with what was called the Histadrut, which was a trade union. And the reason it first came together because there was a lot of underage pay by the young Jewish immigrants who came to Palestine. They were made to overwork. They weren't paid enough. And then there were some big industries of Zionist Jews who came to Palestine from Europe, who started creating big factories, and they had workers who also immigrated, who were working together, youth, like maybe 18, 19. And these people were working together, and they got to know each other, and then they started to develop friendships, and they started to organize together. And that's how they came into being initially. And then this movement made sure that there'll be evening schools, because a lot of people working during the day, they had no time to learn. They made evening schools for them, and then they eventually joined cooperative Israeli settlements, which were different from kibbutzim. Kibbutzim were really hardcore communist spots, where basically everything was shared, and they would allocate it was basically to each according to their ability and so on. Everyone was allocated very particular funding for their purposes. But what they went for Moshavim was a more of a peasant environment where they shared the profits together, but they had more of independent ways of living.
I have a little question
Please.
Before you continue.
Please.
So I actually heard the original kibbutz, right? They're actually they started a long time ago, with the pre-Christian era, when you had on Judea you had the Essence and those communities with the people who were sharing everything, very spiritual group of people who were living on the land and growing crop and sharing, and basically they were isolated from the rest of the big cities and those routes where the trade was going on. So that's I heard the real kibbutz started like
That's a very good point.
2200 years ago, or maybe 2500 years ago. And also some anthropologists, they say the similar communities were also in Asia and some other parts of the world, but this one we know the most because of obviously Old Testament and the other sources. So please continue.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very correct. And in fact, many people would argue that Jesus Christ himself was a Assyrian, and that a lot of the socialist teachings were from that milieu. But just to backtrack a little bit, in 1903 there was a Jewish-German sociologist named Franz Oppenheimer, and he's the one who really envisioned the settling together of the land and cooperatives. And he said that principles that should guide the work were self-independent work, agriculture, common land, and cooperation. And basically these ideas have been put into practice by the various pioneer groups. Now I'll be showing you guys two different videos. So this is my first march in Tel Aviv in 1953, and you're okay.
Yeah, I put it already. You sent me. I put it
Okay.
already.
Yeah, but
So do you want to watch
But
it
it's
again, or
very
should I-
good.
Yeah,
Okay,
we wanna watch
it's
it.
very good. Yeah.
hello.
Want to watch it again? I have other ones, as you wish.
Yeah.
No. Go on with your. I just say that I put it on Facebook.
לציונות חלוצית וסוציאליזם מעצרי. הנוער העובד.
This is a very nice part. הכנס הימי של השומר הצעיר הסתיים בהופעתו הנאה.
לפי העלייה, תובח הקליטה, תכין הסתדרות העובדים.
This is a formation of a new kibbutz, which is a new commune.
חברי קיבוץ מסר, חניכי תנועת השומר הצעיר מארצות אמריקה הלטינית, קיבלו הכשרה בקיבוצים שונים והיו גרעין מגויס בנחל. ביום כ"ח באלול שנת תשי"ג עלה על הקרקע הקיבוץ ה-98 של הקיבוץ הארצי השומר הצעיר. בין הרי מנסי הסלטונים, הצופים פני המשולש, הוקם היישוב מסר, עוד יישוב ספר, חוליה נוספת בחזרת הביטחון של מדינת ישראל. במגילת העלייה אנו מוצאים, באים אנו מן האדמות הגשנות ומן המרחבים של אמריקה הלטינית. עולים אנו מעריה וממוסדותיה החקלאיות, ואינן יכולות להיות תחליף לזה הבית לישראל. תנועת השומר הצעיר בארץ הייתה שותפה לכך, ובגליה התייצבו לברך את דגל הקיבוץ מחדש. יעקב חזן בירך, חגכם הוא חגך של התנועה, היא פותחת בכם, היא תקבע מכן הרבה, אך תמיד תעמוד במכם, עלו והצליחו.
יורי.
מה ילד, חבל עליך, אל תתאמץ כל כך להוכיח את שנאמר כאן. לכן אמא. יופי. יבוא יום ותשחק בכדורסל כמו שחקני.
This is the kibbutz basketball group in Moscow, playing in Moscow.
קיבוץ משמר העמק, והתמודדו עם נבחרת ישראל לפני צאתה למוסקבה.
Before I left Moscow. This is May 8th parade of the victory of the Second World War.
הסרט ההמוניסייר בצבא האדום, לציון הניצחון על הצבא הנאצי, הפגינה את הידידות העמוקה שרוחשים המוני העם, הפועלים והחלוצים בישראל, לברית המועצות ונפגעם הסחרר, מסביר הפטיש, הגן עצמאות העמים.
ברכת העם היהודי המתקבץ במולדתו מאמין לפטיש. בין הנוכחים, עיר ברית המועצות בישראל מעל אברמוב,